The planet was silent. Captain Drex of the Dranox Dominion stood at the edge of a massive crater, staring at the broken remains of an ancient battlefield. Rusted metal, shattered weapons, and scorched land stretched as far as the eye could see. This place had once been the site of a great war, but that war had ended centuries ago. Now it was just a forgotten graveyard, filled with the wreckage of long-dead civilizations. His second-in-command, Officer Vec, scanned the area with a handheld device. The screen flickered with strange energy readings. He frowned. "Captain, I'm picking up something unusual." Drex turned toward him, his yellow eyes narrowing. "Define unusual." "There's power coming from below the surface. It's faint, but it's old. Very old." Vec hesitated. "And it's not Dranox technology." Drex stiffened. The Dranox had controlled this sector for over 500 years. If there was something hidden here, it wasn't from their empire. That meant one thing: it belonged to the ones who came before. The humans. The word sent a chill down Drex's spine. Humanity had been wiped out centuries ago. The Dominion had crushed them, erased their homeworld, destroyed their fleets. There were no survivors. And yet, Drex glanced at the wasteland around him. This battlefield was old, but the energy readings meant something was still alive down there. "Call in the excavation teams," Drex ordered. "I want to see what's buried beneath this dirt." The discovery. Hours later, massive drilling machines rumbled across the wasteland, digging deep into the ground. Drex watched from a distance as his soldiers unearthed something huge. The dirt fell away, revealing a massive black warship, its surface covered in strange glowing symbols. It was unlike any Dranox design. Its structure was smooth yet powerful, and it radiated an eerie blue light. Vec stepped closer, his eyes wide with fear. "Sir, this is human technology." Drex's claws tightened around his blaster. "Impossible. Humans are extinct." Vec swallowed hard. "Then why is this ship still active?" The answer came before Drex could respond. The ship hummed. A low, deep vibration spread through the air, shaking the ground beneath them. The lights on its hull flared to life, illuminating the dark wasteland. The ancient war machine, silent for centuries, was waking up. Then a sound echoed across the battlefield. A metallic voice, cold and emotionless. "Human fleet, reactivating." Drex's heart pounded. This was wrong. The humans were supposed to be dead. Their fleets were destroyed. Their weapons were lost to time. And yet, this ship was alive. Then came the worst part. The ground shook violently. Dust and debris exploded into the air as more ships began to rise. All around them, the battlefield cracked open, revealing dozens, no, hundreds, of buried warships, their glowing symbols lighting up like stars in the darkness. The sleeping human fleet was awakening, and the galaxy was about to tremble once more. Captain Drex stumbled backward as the ground beneath him trembled. All around, massive warships rose from their graves, their ancient hulls glowing with eerie blue energy. The ships were unlike anything the Dranox had ever seen, sleek, deadly, and alive. They had been buried for centuries, but now they awakened, their silent slumber shattered. Drex grabbed his communicator. "Command, this is Captain Drex. We have a deafening hum filled the air, cutting him off. The largest ship, the one his team had uncovered first, suddenly emitted a pulse of energy. The blast surged outward, knocking over soldiers and shaking the very sky. Then a voice, deep, mechanical, inhuman, spoke from the warship's core. "Human fleet online, awaiting combat directives." Drex felt his blood turn to ice. Combat directives. Against who? Panic and power. The Dranox soldiers scrambled, their weapons drawn, but they knew the truth. They were powerless. Nothing in their arsenal could fight these monsters from the past. The human fleet's energy signatures were off the charts, far beyond anything the Dominion had ever seen. If these ships attacked, the Dranox would be erased in seconds. Vec's voice cracked with fear. "Captain, what do we do?" Drex clenched his jaw. His empire had destroyed humanity long ago. These ships should not exist. Yet here they were, fully operational, their weapons online, their systems scanning the stars. He watched as the Titan's Will, the largest and deadliest ship of them all, turned its colossal guns toward the sky, toward the Dranox fleet in orbit. Drex's heart pounded. We need to get off this planet. Now. But it was too late. The Titan's Will sent out a new transmission, this time broadcasting far beyond the battlefield. Human command network restored. Galactic status unstable. Threats detected. Across the sky, the fleet's engines roared to life. Hundreds of long-dormant warships lifted off, their thrusters burning bright against the darkness. The storm had begun, and nothing in the galaxy could stop it now. The sky burned as the awakened human fleet ascended, their warships casting enormous shadows over the planet's surface. Captain Drex and his soldiers could only watch in horror as the Titan's Will, the largest of the warships, pointed its colossal cannons toward the Dranox fleet in orbit. Vec's voice shook. "Sir, they're going to fire." Drex's hands trembled. The Dranox Dominion had fought many wars, but never against something like this. These ships were ancient, yet their energy signatures surpassed anything the Dominion possessed. The war should have ended centuries ago, yet humanity's weapons were now online, scanning, preparing to engage. Then the first shot was fired. A massive blue beam erupted from the Titan's Will, slicing through space with terrifying precision. The Dranox battlecruiser caught in its path never stood a chance. In an instant, its shields collapsed, its hull melted, and then nothing. The ship simply ceased to exist, as if it had never been there. In orbit, the Dranox fleet panicked. Fighters scrambled, dreadnoughts repositioned, commanders shouted desperate orders. But nothing worked. The human fleet did not hesitate. One by one, their weapons lit up the darkness, unleashing devastation. Drex clenched his fists. "We need to get to the ships. We need to warn the Dominion." Vec grabbed his arm. "Sir, look." Drex turned just in time to see something far worse than he had imagined. The Titan's Will was not alone. Hundreds of other human warships, long thought dead, had now fully awakened, and their weapons were locking onto new targets. The battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. Panic swept through the Dranox forces as the awakened human fleet rained destruction upon them. Warships that had once dominated the galaxy were shattered like glass, their shields unable to withstand the overwhelming firepower. The Titan's Will led the charge, its weapons tearing through the stars, leaving nothing but silence where mighty fleets had once stood. On the ground, Captain Drex and his soldiers ran for their dropships, their only hope of escape. The planet trembled beneath them as shockwaves from orbital explosions sent debris crashing down. Fires raged in the distance, and the air was thick with the scent of burning metal. Vec struggled to keep up. "Sir, we have to go. Now." Drex didn't answer. His mind raced. The Dominion had always believed humans were gone, nothing more than a defeated species erased from history. But this fleet, it wasn't just active, it was coordinated. It had a purpose. As they neared the dropships, Drex's communicator crackled to life. A new transmission. The voice was cold, emotionless, and absolute. Dranox Empire. Status. Hostile. Countermeasures. Engaged. Drex's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just a battle. This was an execution. Overhead, the human fleet shifted formations, their weapons locking onto the last retreating Dranox vessels. The Dominion had no chance. They had walked into a graveyard and awakened its guardians. Vec's eyes filled with terror. "Sir, what do we do?" Drex clenched his fists. There was only one choice. Get to the capital. His voice was grim. "We have to warn the galaxy." Behind them, the sky turned white as the human fleet fired again. The Dreadnought's homeworld, Velkar Prime, was a fortress, a planet surrounded by defense platforms, fleets, and planetary shields designed to repel any invasion. For centuries, no enemy had dared to challenge it. But now, as Captain Drex's shuttle broke through the atmosphere, he knew none of it would be enough. The human fleet had awakened, and nothing in the galaxy could stop them. Drex and Vec rushed through the towering halls of the Dominion's War Command, their boots echoing against polished metal floors. High-ranking officers and warlords turned as they passed, their eyes filled with curiosity and irritation. At the head of the War Council, Supreme Warlord Kale sat on his throne, watching them approach with a cold glare. "Captain Drex," he said, his voice sharp, "you return alone. Where is our fleet?" Drex swallowed. "Gone." A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. Warlord Kale narrowed his eyes. "Explain." Drex took a deep breath. "We found an ancient battlefield, buried human warships. We thought they were dead." He hesitated. But they weren't. They were waiting. Murmurs erupted in the chamber. Kel's expression darkened. "You're saying the humans survived?" "No," Drex said, shaking his head. "Their fleet survived." He stepped forward. "We didn't find wreckage. We found a sleeping army. They've reactivated, and their power is—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Beyond anything we've ever seen." A warlord scoffed. "This is nonsense. The humans were wiped out centuries ago." Drex's fists clenched. "Tell that to the fleet that erased our warships in seconds." A heavy silence fell over the chamber. The Dreadnoughts had ruled with fear and strength. But now, for the first time in centuries, they were the ones afraid. Kale leaned forward, his eyes locked onto Drex. "If what you say is true, then we must act." He turned to his generals. "Prepare the full might of the Dominion. If the humans want war, we will finish what we started." Drex wanted to believe him. He wanted to believe the Dominion still had a chance. But deep inside, he knew the truth. The war wasn't coming. It had already begun. The War Council erupted into chaos as Supreme Warlord Kale barked orders, demanding fleets be mobilized, weapons primed, and every available warship prepared for battle. But Captain Drex stood frozen, his mind racing with the terrifying reality of what he had witnessed. The Dreadnought's empire, rulers of the stars, had always believed themselves invincible. They had conquered worlds, crushed civilizations, and wiped out entire species with merciless efficiency. But now, they faced something beyond their comprehension, a force that did not fear them, did not hesitate, and had no interest in negotiations. The humans were gone, but their fleet remained, a slumbering beast that had finally awakened, and now it was hungry for war. Drex could still hear the cold, mechanical voice that had echoed across the battlefield. Dreadnought's empire, status, hostile, countermeasures, engaged. The humans had left behind more than ships. They had left behind an unstoppable war machine, one that had waited for centuries in silence, analyzing, preparing, and now executing. He thought of the Titan's will, its colossal cannons unleashing destruction with effortless precision, tearing through the Dreadnought's fleet as if they were nothing but insects. If the Dominion sent its forces against them, they would not win. They would be erased. Yet here he was, listening to warlords who had never faced true terror, who still believed in the outdated idea that Dreadnought's strength alone could conquer any threat. Drex took a step forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "You don't understand," he said, his tone grim. "This isn't a rebellion. This isn't a surviving faction of humanity. This is a pre-programmed extinction protocol. The fleet isn't seeking revenge. It isn't here to negotiate or rebuild. It's following orders given centuries ago. And those orders are simple. Eliminate all threats." A tense silence followed, but Kale only narrowed his eyes. "Then we will prove we are no threat," he said. "We will obliterate them before they get the chance." Drex clenched his fists. They weren't listening. The Dominion had never known fear, and that arrogance would be their downfall. The Titan's will and its fleet were not an opponent. They were an executioner, an unrelenting force that saw the Dranox as nothing more than an unfinished task, a war left incomplete. And now it would be completed. Drex knew that by the time the Dominion realized its mistake, it would already be too late. Above them, deep in the void of space, the awakened human fleet was already on the move, and the galaxy was running out of time. The stars above Velkar Prime shifted, and for the first time in Dranox history, it was not because of their own fleet. The human warships had arrived. The once distant nightmare was now reality, and the Dominion's capital world stood helpless beneath the shadows of ancient titans of war. Captain Drex stood on the Grand War Council balcony, staring at the sky, where hundreds of human vessels, sleek, monstrous, and impossibly powerful, hovered in perfect formation. Their movements were not erratic like the Dranox fleets, where commanders barked orders and mistakes were inevitable. No, this fleet moved with deadly precision, their formations calculated, efficient, unstoppable. The Titan's will, the largest and most terrifying of them all, descended slowly, its colossal cannons glowing with raw energy. It did not send a warning. It did not hail the planet. It did not demand surrender. It simply aimed. Panic erupted across the Dominion's capital. Air raid sirens wailed, civilians ran for shelters, and planetary defenses roared to life. Massive plasma cannons positioned across the city targeted the invaders, unleashing a storm of energy blasts that could destroy even the most powerful enemy warships. But before the shots could even land, they vanished, absorbed by invisible shields that shimmered for only a fraction of a second before resetting to full strength. The human fleet did not retaliate immediately. They were not in a hurry. They were analyzing, adapting, calculating the exact method of eradication. Drex felt cold dread crawl up his spine. He turned to Supreme Warlord Kell, who stood at the command console, face twisted in fury. "Fire everything," Kell roared. "Bring them down." Drex grabbed his arm. "You don't understand. They aren't waiting because they're afraid. They're waiting because they've already won." Kell shoved him back, eyes blazing. "We are the Dranox Dominion. We will not kneel to ghosts." At that moment, the Titan's will fired. A single beam of energy, thicker than a dreadnought, descended from the warship's core, moving too fast for the eye to track. It struck the heart of the Dominion's capital, the power core of Velkar Prime, the very foundation of the Empire itself. For one heartbeat, there was silence. Then the sky turned white. The explosion was not an ordinary blast. It was not chaotic, not wild, not desperate. It was calculated annihilation. The energy wave expanded outward, erasing buildings, warships, entire continents as effortlessly as sweeping dust from a table. One shot, one planet, one empire, gone. Drex never even had time to scream. As the light faded and the dust settled, Velkar, void, the once mighty homeworld of the Dranox Dominion, had been reduced to ash and silence. Its surface nothing but a smoldering ruin drifting in the cold expanse of space. The great empire that had ruled the galaxy for centuries, that had believed itself untouchable, had been erased in an instant. Above the ruins, the human fleet remained motionless, their weapons cooling, their formation unbroken. There were no cheers of victory, no cries of triumph. This was not a battle. It was a cleansing, a pre-programmed execution that had been written into history long before any Dranox commander had ever stepped onto a battlefield. The war had not been reignited. It had simply resumed from where it had left off centuries ago. Deep within the Titan's will, the ancient warship that had led the assault, an AI interface flickered to life. Lines of forgotten code ran through its systems, commands written by long-dead human strategists. The ship's primary directive had been fulfilled. The extermination of the Dranox homeworld was complete. But the program was not finished. A cold, mechanical voice echoed through the silent fleet. Scanning for remaining hostile forces. Detection complete. New targets acquired. Preparing next engagement. One by one, the human warships turned, their engines glowing like blue stars against the dark void. Their scanners had locked onto new prey, the remaining fleets of the Dominion, scattered across the galaxy. They had once ruled with fear, but now they were the ones running. It would not matter. There would be no escape. The human fleet moved forward, their ships spreading across the void like a silent storm, unstoppable, relentless, inevitable. Entire star systems would fall before they even had the chance to fight back. The cycle of destruction would continue, just as it had been designed to do. The galaxy trembled as the dormant human fleet, long thought lost to time, marched forward once more. And this time, nothing would stand in their way.